Hello, welcome, and good evening, good day, whatever time of day it is, wherever you're watching from. Um, I am, as of now, I guess, Captain Mike, and today we're going to be doing some historic flying. Um, so for those of you who weren't here previously, um, we're going to be recreating the 1911 coast-to-coast flight of Calbraith Rodgers in the Wright Model EX Vin Fiz aircraft. I don't have the ability to use a Vin Fiz in Flight Simulator, but we have instead a 1916-ish Curtiss JN4, and as part of the deal here, I am going to be doing this without using any modern, or with a minimum of modern navigation tools. I'll talk about that in more detail when we get started here. But let's go ahead and take a look at what we're doing today. What a beauty. All right. All right, so this is what we're flying. Curtiss JN4, nicknamed the Jenny, was first model was first built in. I'm not doing a pre-flight unless there isn't enough to make it worth doing a pre-flight in this. Model was first built in 1916. Was largely, most of them were originally commissioned by the U.S. Army Air Corps, predecessor of the modern U.S. Air Force, as a two-seat trainer aircraft. They're very well liked by their pilots, I believe. Instructor / primary pilot sat in the back. Trainee sat in the front. So tons of these were built, and in the during the second half of World War One, were used as trainers. And then after World War One ended, the U.S. Army decided to sell all of them as surplus. Or decided to sell a lot of these as surplus, and then they became a very popular plane among the barnstormer crowd. So if you've seen videos of vintage wing walkers, so forth, this is what a lot of them were doing, stuff like this. Meanwhile, make me do this right now. Okay, let's see here. I need to do that. Okay, I think that's everything. This is not obviously very sophisticated by modern standards. Do a quick flight control check here. Elevators up, elevators down, left turn, right turn, rudder right, rudder left. Okay. All right. Somewhere down here there's a compass. Right. So yeah, as far as what's going on, I have this chart here, which it's the best way I can come up with to approximate using a paper chart. And then I've got the compass, and that is going to be the extent of the navigational tools I'm going to be using for this. Alright, and we are moving Alright, so we are starting outside of Middletown, I don't know. Middleton, New York. In the historic flight, so in the original historic cross-country flight that I'm replicating, Calbraith Rodgers arrived at Middleton September 18th in the early evening, or September 17th in the early evening, sorry. September 18th, shortly after taking off, the airplane collided with a tree. The takeoff location that he'd chosen just wasn't sufficiently clear of obstacles, and in trying to avoid a power line, Rodgers ended up diverting directly into a tree, completely smashed up his airplane. While we're taxiing here, this is what the airplane that Calbraith Rodgers was using looked like. Anyway, he completely smashed up his airplane, and they had to spend the next 3 days rebuilding it. So finally, here we are on mid-afternoon of September 21st, and we are finally getting underway for the next leg of this thing. If I can make it down the taxiway in one piece. Altitude is 523 feet. There. Okay. And I have allowed this in, and allowed the plane to go a little bit too fast. Unlike modern airplanes, there are no brakes on the landing gear, so you just kind of have to deal with, control the speed as best as possible, and then just kind of deal with where it goes. And I was too busy talking to do so. Alright. Still haven't run into anything, though, so I've got a better record than Rodgers as of right now. Okay, we're on the runway, taking off now. Okay, now my first goal here... Ooh, look at the pretty fall colors. My first goal here is to try to find the Erie Railroad. The real-life Calbraith Rodgers was by way of... Okay, so the real life Calbraith Rodgers had a support crew of several technicians, a couple of sponsors from the Ogden Meat Packing Company in Chicago, and his wife and mother were there too. But anyway, so he had a full crew going with him, and they were traveling by way of rail. And rail was also the primary means of navigation that Rodgers had available to him. So yeah, like I said, my first job here is to try to find the Erie Railroad. It should be to the north of where I landed. And I'm not going north. That's perfect. Now, I'm trying to take as few liberties as possible with the extra navigational tools I have available as somebody not from the 1910s. But you'll see, I'm just trying to, I just have like the chart, I just have the map and my planned route here. I don't have the thing that actually shows my position on here, and I'm going to try to avoid using that. One liberty I am taking, if you compare the plane I'm in to the Wright Model EX, visibility out the front's a lot worse. So a liberty I am going to be taking is I am going to be using the chase camera quite a bit. But yeah, this is what the cruising speed of this girl is. The specs that Flight Simulator shows say that it's a cruising speed of 55 knots true airspeed. My first flight on Tuesday, I was averaging a little bit over 60. I guess we'll find out guess we'll see what it's like today. Still looking for that railroad. I guess it'll be safe to say if I hit this mountain ridge here, I've gone too far, because that's going to be this ridge. What this is, so this is what's called the, so this is what's called a visual flight reference chart. These are distributed by the FAA, and so it's like a combination of like a visual landmarks and topographic map. I'm using it as a so Rodgers would have had some sort of maps with him, and I'm using this as a stand-in for like this is about as accurate as I can hope for. I am assuming this is roughly as accurate as the maps he had. Might or might not be right about that, but can't time travel. Still looking for that railroad. I can't figure out where it is. I think my best bet's to fly south along this ridge line, or southwest along this ridge line until I come up with something. Yeah, as I discovered, I had assumed that finding and following the railways would be relatively straightforward, and I mean, it kind of is once you figure out where the railway is. The problem is there's a lot more foliage covering the railways than I had been prepared for. So this is a bit more of a challenge. Still not sure where this track is, but that right there, I'm gonna guess that pass there is this on the map. So that might be my best shot for getting my bearings. Wait, that looks like a rail. That looks, the way the curve is, I bet that's it. Or is that a regular road? I can't tell if that's a railroad or a road. I think that's a railroad. Yeah, that's the railroad. Alright, we're on track. We are on track, so that would make this Otisville. Did not mean to make the pun. Or, on track was an unintentional pun. Do with that what you will. There's the track. There's the train again. Must be a tunnel there. Okay, so So now we're going to follow this valley southwest to Port Jervis, so again, we kind of lose sight of the tracks itself. It should be straightforward enough to follow the valley to Port Jervis. Yeah, there's the track again, and as I was complaining about yesterday, it's really disappearing into those trees. Complaining about, well, not yesterday, but anyway. Port Jervis, we're going to pick up, I think that's the Susquehanna River. So again, that should be, if anything, easier to keep track of than the railway itself. The Susquehanna? Let's see. I've also got paper copies of the chart in front of me, too. This is not the Susquehanna River. I don't. Okay. I don't know what river I'm looking for, or what the name of this river I'm looking for is, but it's there. Yeah, if there's somewhere on this chart that says what this river's called, I can't find it. Oh well. Be gone, bot. Well, as a navigation challenge today is not often the most promising start, but stick with it. At the risk. Oh, it's the Delaware River. Okay, there you go. Not this, but what I'm looking for, that. Hello, Feathers. I saw you recently in an article from a dubious publication of dubious quality, and also in a TV commercial. So yeah, friend of the show. Welcome, Feathers. The dubious publication I'm referring to is, of course, the New York Times. All right, so since you just got here to get you up to speed, Feathers, what we're approaching is Port Jervis, New York, which would be a cumulative 100-something miles from New York City. This is the Delaware River up ahead here, and we're going to be following it to the northwest. And look at that, the railroad's visible again. Okay, so further to get you up to speed here, so this is replicating the second day, the second day's flight of Calbraith Rodgers on the Vin Fiz cross-country trip. So the first flight he started in Brooklyn, in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn. That was September 17th, 1911. He ended up in Middleton, New York, which is where I started half an hour ago. And now we are here at Port Jervis, heading northwest. Yeah. I think the biggest problem with that I think the biggest problem with that one, with the article we're both talking about, is that the title was very misleading, because it was the article itself was more people in the news who were wearing clothes, and not like actually a style, not actually like anything about style. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that. I'm not gonna say you have no style. I'm just some of the other people included in that cohort I might say that about, but feel bad saying that about you. Yeah, so I'll fill in some biographical details of Cal Rodgers. So Cal Rodgers was born January 12th, 1879. He was in a family that was sort of U.S. military royalty of sorts. His great-granduncle was Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry, one of the heroes of the War of 1812. And his great-grandfather, the younger brother of Oliver Hazard Perry, was Matthew C. Perry, another naval commander and international diplomat, or one of the first U.S. diplomats to the Far East, if I remember my history correctly. He was born in Pittsburgh. Most of his, I think for much of his life, he spent in Long Island. His mother was something of a socialite. Yeah, I didn't look. Didn't look as much into Matthew Perry as I did to Oliver. Was the more interesting one. But yeah. So let's see. So Rodgers had contracted scarlet fever at the age of 6, which ended up partially deafening him and making him ineligible for naval to follow in the family tradition of naval service. And he ended up spending sort of an aimless young adulthood. Was sort of attempting to break out as a race car driver in the 1900s, not doing terribly successfully at it, but his cousin, one John Rodgers, was present, or his cousin John Rodgers, yeah, was a U.S. Navy man who ended up being appointed as a liaison, or ended up being appointed to become one of the first Navy pilots ever. So his cousin went to the Wright brothers flying school in Dayton, Ohio, and invited Cal along during his training, and Cal immediately fell in love. So this was April 1911, and the first time Cal had seen an airplane. I mean, in 1911, not a whole lot of people. There still hadn't been a whole lot of people who'd seen an airplane. Much fewer who'd flown in one. Cal immediately fell in love with the idea of flying. And in June of 1911, began attending the Wright brothers flying school himself. Even before finishing his lessons, he decided he was so in love with the flying that he'd out and out purchased one of the Wright brothers Model B aircraft. I think he felt that the school wasn't giving him enough airtime in their aircraft, so he out and purchased one. Did pass his flying lessons of some sort, or did pass his flying lessons, although he was criticized for his ability to land the plane softly. No comment. And also and was given the 49th ever pilot's license, which were the first official pilot's licenses were issued by the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale in France. I don't know if Rodgers ever actually went to France for this, but he was issued... I don't think he was. I think he was given a check ride by an American representative of the FAI. But yeah, so he immediately began doing the then nascent air show circuit. And at some point in the late summer of 1911, August, we'll say, he became determined to be one of the first people, or he became determined to try to earn William Randolph Hearst's $50,000 prize to be the first person to fly across the continental U.S., the first aviator to fly across the continental U.S. So for some more background on that, William Randolph Hearst attended an air show in the late summer, early fall of 1910. And while not interested in becoming a pilot himself, he was enamored with the idea of piloting, and then decided to put forth a $50,000 prize to the first aviator across the U.S. He ended up altering the deal such that there was an arbitrary deadline of the end of October 1911, and the aviator had to do it in 30 days, which I don't know if it was necessarily the case that this was his way of making sure that he never had to pay it out, but to my mind it suggests that he intended to make sure this didn't end up having to get paid out. And he didn't, to spoil sort of the ending of this thing. He did not end up paying the $50,000 prize to anybody. But Rodgers did end up completing the trip. Among other things, like the first serious challengers for the prize none of them actually ended up starting their journey until September of 1911. Rodgers ended up being the first of the three. Or there were four serious attempts to do this, and Rodgers ended up being the first of the three to finish. One of them didn't finish at all. The first of the three aviators to begin their attempt to cross the country was Robert Fowler, who flew out of San Francisco on September 11th. Don't make any jokes about that. Unfortunately, due to basically didn't anticipate some of the challenges he would face, and got spent about a month trapped in the Sierra Nevada, and basically had to restart. He finally ended up finishing his... He did finish a cross-country trip, but it would take him until February of 1912. Then the second competitor was James Ward, who flew a Curtiss Model D, predecessor of this aircraft, out of Governor's Island on September 13th, and would end up suffering multiple engine issues in Western New York, and just gave up. Hello, Nige. I like your badge. I was just talking about the Oh, we're good. I was talking about what is going on right now, or what we're doing right now, which is I am doing a sort of tribute to the first aviator to fly across the continental U.S. So here's a period poster depicting what happened, and the next part of my story, as I was describing the events of what happened. So Cal Rodgers, the aviator in question, ended up having one serious advantage that the other two didn't, and that was a corporate sponsor. Or that his two competitors didn't have, and that was a corporate sponsor. In this case, the Vin Fiz soft drink. It was a grape-flavored soft drink, distributed by Armour and Company, which was first and foremost a meat packing concern in Chicago. Which ended up branching into other food service things. So they put up the money to fully support Rodgers on his trip, which involved small posse of mechanicians, as they are referred to in the period documentation. 3 train cars for the personnel and fuel and spare airplane parts. And also Rodgers' wife and mother ended up accompanying him, not in the airplane, but on the train. Here's a picture of the actual airplane he flew. It's in the Smithsonian. And actual airplane he flew is kind of a... Oh, nice, you were in D.C. Yeah, and then, anyway, what I was saying, actual airplane's kind of a misnomer, because... well, it's kind of an thing, because it ended up being a real ship of Theseus type situation. But, yeah, that's the plane. Yep, gravity tank. Gravity tank, you can't see it too well in this picture, but it has The propellers were chain driven. As was usual at the time. So yeah, so there's no, so like, Flight Simulator, you have the Wright model, you have like the original Wright Flyer as an option, but, ooh, okay, so that's gonna be this river here at Lackawaxen, I'm guessing. Yeah. Okay. Fun. Actually, here's another fun fact about this. So we got this gravity fuel tank right here next to the aviator's head, which, yeah. Oh, very cool. Very cool. I'm happy to have another European viewer, or happy to have viewers from anywhere. But yeah, very cool. Well, it's called the gravity tank because the fuel's in here and the engine's here, and that's how the fuel gets to the engine. Or gravity is how the fuel gets to the engine. But anyway, so that fuel tank's right next to the aviator's head, and Cal Rodgers, seen here, well, he chain-smoked cigars, including while he was flying, and somehow that never went wrong. So the plane that I'm flying... The plane that I'm flying is a Curtiss JN4. These were built by Glenn Curtiss's airplane company, who was the primary competitor to the Wright brothers in the U.S. In the beginning of the aviation era. These were largely commissioned by the U.S. Army Air Corps as a training aircraft. During the second half of the World War I. And actually a vast number, so after World War I ended, the U.S. Army sold off a vast number of these as surplus, and they became a favorite of barnstorming pilots during the aviation era, or during the pioneer era. So I guess in theory you could do tricks in this. I'm mostly concerned with navigating in one piece right now. We're with navigation right now, but maybe later on I'll try doing that. I did fly under the Verrazano Narrows Bridge in Part 1, but the Verrazano Narrows Bridge has quite a bit of space underneath it. Now, as you can see, now part of my deal is that I'm trying to navigate strictly using, well, obviously not actual paper, but paper in scare quotes, charts, and my compass. I do have the option to turn the thing that shows where your airplane is on, but my deal with that is that I have to do, if I turn the Find My Airplane thing on, so the railroad is right there. For this portion of it, it's following the river, and the river is obviously a little bit easier to keep track of. If you let me zoom. So, whoop, zoomed in too far. So this line here with the so the solid line with the cross ticks on it, that's the railroad. I forget what it's a Norfolk Southern line now, but it was the Erie Railroad back in period. What else? Oh yeah, so if I turn the Find My Airplane thing on, then my deal is that I've got some grape Kool-Aid here in tribute to Vin Fiz, or to the Vin Fiz soft drink, which might or might not still be manufactured. And I have to drink this room temperature grape Kool-Aid if I turn the Find My Airplane thing on. Now, well, Armour and Company described Vin Fiz as the ideal soft drink, which I guess, I don't know how much market penetration Coke had in 1911, but anyway, the ideal soft drink was described by people who actually tried it. It was described by a number of people who actually tried it. I have a quote here that says, "A fine blend of river sludge and horse slop." It was being manufactured by somebody as late as the mid-2000s, but I haven't been able to find any recent references to it, unfortunately. Now, I am taking, as you notice, I'm taking quite a bit of liberty with the chase cam, and the reason I feel justified in doing that because if you compare these two aircraft, the Wright Model EX has quite a bit more visibility out the front than the Jenny does. But yeah. So Nigeby, if you're still here, are you a flight sim guy? Nice. Very nice. This is actually my first real serious attempt to fuck around with a vintage aircraft. But I do a lot of flight seeing. I have done some virtual airline stuff. Like there was a year I followed the F1 circuit around in various airliners, but I don't know. I was fine. I gotten to the point where I just find IFR flying kind of tedious. So I'm thinking this may be Narrowsburg? That kind of fits the railway. Is it here? Oh, very nice. So you got some years on me. Yeah, my first serious flight simulator was the 2004 Century of Flight Edition. But yeah, I've been messing with it on and off ever since then. I became a lot more serious about it in the last couple of years. I would love to be an actual pilot, but I have a couple of health issues that the US FAA objects to. So no pilot's license anytime soon. But also one of the beauties of flight simulators, you don't have to worry about controlled airspaces and stuff like that, or, you know, how expensive owning and maintaining a plane is. Or dying in a crash. I don't know, if you crash hard enough, maybe the computer will blow up. That wouldn't be good. Oh, neat. Very neat. To be honest, like, I am, like, vaguely frightened of helicopters, to be honest. But, they are wild machines, and that's cool that you're, it's cool that you're, at least, more adjacent to the industry than I am. Okay, I think... we're at a match for... we're at a match for Hecton. I had this problem yesterday where the farther along in the flight I got, the less confident my ability to judge distances correctly I was getting. Again, we're following a river right now, which isn't much of a challenge navigationally, but just keeping track of where you are. The runway is a fairly short grass strip, and that is going to be a challenge. The runway I'm looking for here is a fairly short grass strip. Finding that's going to be a bit of a challenge. Right. Ooh. Ooh. Steady, buddy. Okay, so that would be... So this is here. This is here. I am feeling pretty confident in saying that. Maybe I was, maybe it's here. Maybe it's here. Maybe I'm still here. So I guess the funny thing is that I am like, oh, okay, calm down, buddy. Airplane is fighting me now. But anyway, the helicopters I see helicopters constantly because I live within half a mile of 3 hospitals, so I see helicopters constantly. Why are we pulling up? Why are we going up? So I guess they're normal enough, but it is I don't know. I just wouldn't. Definitely would not want to be in a helicopter in inclement weather. Well, okay, yeah. I've got the other company. I mean, I am operating under the assumption that Cal had a pocket compass on him in the plane. This doesn't, but yeah, the plane itself doesn't have one naturally. You just got this. You just got your little app here. Yeah, in terms of what you actually can see here, we got. Coolant, oil pressure, engine RPM, and altimeter, and fuel. And that's all you got to work with in terms of gauges. So and good eyesight. Yeah, I at least think that having a compass isn't really cheating. Feel free to tell me differently. so I think now I'm here. Which is where I thought I was earlier, but this looks more like it. Yeah, so, there's another reason I'm not specifically, or like right now I'm favoring using the river over the rail line. This is something that has me worried about some of the later legs. The rail line is just like completely disappearing into the foliage here. Oh, from Morocco to France, very nice. What era Bonanza is the Black Square? I have exactly one third-party aircraft as of right now, and it's the Cow's Diamond DA-40, because I like the DA-40, but the one that, like, the version that's in there, that's in the simulator right now, kind of it has a lot of broken systems. Yeah, I know Black Square. Yeah, Black Square's got a pretty good reputation for GA stuff. I may. Did Black Square do the like TBM 850? That's another one I hear is really good. Yeah, they did. Well, Mike Hub 3, I will consider doing that when I am not operating an airplane, or I will consider popping Discord open once I'm done operating an airplane. So how long, so HP, how long did that flight take, the Morocco to France, how long does that take? Because I, can definitely picture that in my head, but not really what the distance is like for that. 2 hours, 46 minutes? Okay. Because, Bonanza's pretty fast. Like, Bonanza's reasonably fast for a piston plane. I know I messed around with well, I messed around with the built-in one a bit. I like the TBM a lot, although it's almost too fast for flight seeing. I'm thinking about this obviously doing the cross country in this thing's going to end up taking a long time. But I'm thinking about doing a world tour and a TBM soon, or like in one of my future streaming projects. But yeah, right now I'm only doing twice a week and a couple hours a day, or a couple hours per stream at that. And at that rate, this is getting across the U.S. in this thing's going to end up taking probably at least, I'm guessing, about 2 months. Yeah, I see you. I did not trust him either. But yeah, Nigel, I will give you a follow once I'm out of the cockpit. Yeah, but right now I'm only streaming Flight Sim, but I also play a lot of Forza. Which I probably could stream it, but I don't want to spend my entire life in front of a. I want to spend my entire life in front of a microphone. I do a lot of Forza. I do been playing First Light, which I been really enjoying. The new James Bond game. I used to do. I've kind of fallen off of it recently because I used to do sim racing a lot, and I've kind of fallen off of it a little bit recently because my rig, like my rig's needs some parts replaced. Yeah, I'm going to say, I am going to say that 007 First Light is a better experience than roughly half of the Daniel Craig movies. Not to be that guy, but, yeah. Actually, more First Light's a better experience than roughly half the Bond's movies in general. And I say that as a big fan of the series. I've been a real curmudgeon about the series since No Time to Die. Oh, nice. Yeah. No Time to Die turned me into a real curmudgeon about the Daniel Craig movies, but I am a fan of the series overall. So. It's not bad, it's just very much not the film I wanted it to be. And really, that's mostly referring to the last half hour of it. Yeah, it is linear. I will say that it is very linear, but I feel like it has like that game certainly captures the James Bond experience than any game, more than any of the franchise games so far. I think like it really, like, just as like a I think as a holistic simulator of the Bond experience, I think the game does a really good job of that. But yeah, it isn't it is very linear, and it's definitely not my favorite shooter. No, I'm about 3/4 of the way through it right now. I only just started it. I only really started it in earnest like last week. Might or might not be able to finish it this weekend. I do have some stuff going on. I do have some other stuff going on. Well, I appreciate that. Appreciate that very much. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, my experience so far has been that it's pretty chill here, so that's That's so it's been nice. Definitely. I think I mean, I have my ideas about what I want to do with the simulator, and I don't know if it's necessarily going to be anything. I don't necessarily know if my streams are ever going to be interesting to people other than me, but yeah, it's still a cool community. Happy to be part of. On that subject, okay, railroad's there. Okay, so I think this is Hancock. Which just about, yeah, that tracks with what the compass is showing. So this is Hancock. And Delaware goes that way. And I need to go this way. Yeah, yeah, so my last flight before this, so, I do have a plan to do this, and then I have a plan for another historic flight to do sometime after this. As a palate cleanser, I'm like switching between doing flight seeing and historic, and so as a palate cleanser after this, I'm probably going to go back to flight seeing for a bit. But, yeah. I also might... Like, I've been exclusively doing Flight Simulator, but when the new Ace Combat comes out, I might do that for a bit on stream. Because I really loved Ace Combat 7. And I know that there are lots of other ones that are fan favorite. I know, like, there's the big pre-order bonus, is Ace Combat 0, and I know that's, like, sort of the fan favorite of the series, so I'm keen to try that out. Okay, I think... I'm gonna try turning south here. Yeah. I'm try going this way and see if that's right. Somewhere about here. I will say that's an advantage Cal had that I don't, is that, like, there wasn't runway infrastructure, there wasn't any airplane infrastructure to speak of back then, and you just sort of landed wherever you could, whereas I am trying to stick to actual run, because of the way the Flight Simulator works, I'm trying to stick to, like, actual in-game airfields. Heading. Yeah. Is that it over there? I know this one's a grass runway. But I looked up beforehand that this is a grass runway I'm looking for, which is sometimes a nightmare. Okay, and there's also apparently a small lake nearby. Well, okay, so I'm manually flying it right now, and basically what happens is that it's trying, like, I'm, like, is this it? I don't have it trimmed very well currently is the thing, so it's not like, so it wants to go one way, and Alright. You know what? Damn it. If I had been a tiny bit more patient. Now I see where it is. Anyway, I don't have it trimmed very well, so it like wants to like point a certain direction, and I'm just having to constantly adjust it. I don't even know if trimming at all is realistic for this plane, but yeah. Anyway, Nige, did you ever do any of the bush trips in 2020? Because boy, some of those had some real nightmare to find airstrips in them. Even with navigation. Alright, come on. I will take that. Now this plane doesn't have any brakes, so I just gotta, like, cut the engine and hope it stops. Here, we'll swallow him a bit. Alright, well, I landed, and I found and I did more or less find the runway on my own. Like, not exactly, but I did more or less find the runway on my own. So we're gonna unload that, and it is still relatively early. It's still relatively early, so, while this is as far as Rodgers got on September 21st, I am gonna do the first half of where he went on September 22nd. Do I want to reload the aircraft? Now, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. We're going to turn the fuel off. Going to load this. Right. And fuel. Load. All right. All right. So so a bit of historical context. Rodgers originally landed in Middleton, New York, in the evening of September 21st, or in the evening of September 17th. On the 18th, he tried to take off and wasn't sufficiently wasn't didn't have a sufficiently clear runway didn't have a sufficiently clear field in front of him. Ended up hitting a tree shortly after takeoff, and they spent 3 days repairing it. So he finally actually took off from Middleton on September 21st in the mid-afternoon, and by the time he had gotten to Hancock, New York, he got to Hancock, New York, and smashed one of the landing skids. Let me pull that up. Smashed one of his landing skids during the landing, which prevented him from making any further progress that day. So I don't remember if Hancock was his original goal for that day. But anyway, so the next goal, but his goal for the 22nd, which let me change the weather here. Trying to keep the sun relatively similar to what it would have been. There we go. All right, so his goal for the 22nd was to get to Elmira, New York, from Hancock, and I will elaborate on how that went shortly. Runway do I have? And I definitely want to turn around, so okay. Oh, yeah, right. Sorry. Hello, Element Future. You didn't miss anything. Well, you missed me turning the airplane back on, but that's about it. Alright, and all I did was put more fuel in it. I promise. I mean, does this not look the same? There we go. We're finally off the ground. Oh, yeah, it is. Right, UK. Well, have a good night, NIGB. Thank you for joining us, and yeah, I'll give you a follow when I'm done with this, so, very cool. Very cool talking to you. Oh, turn that off. Good night. Alright, so Element, I don't know how long you've been here, but to catch you up to speed, so what I am recreating is the 1911 flight of the Vin Fiz across, which was the first flight. Oh, okay. The first flight of an airplane across the continental U.S. And so now we're on the third day of voyage. So my first goal here is to get back to where the railroad was. So as I may or may not have adequately explained earlier, Rodgers had a Cal Rodgers, the aviator in question, had a support crew traveling by train, and so that would be the train lines would be his primary navigation. Or would be his primary means of navigation across the U.S. In this case, following what was then the Erie Railroad main line across New York, across upstate New York currently. There's said railroad. Because this is the U.S. and we suck, I don't think this is used. I don't think this is used by passenger railroad anymore. It's currently owned by, this rail is currently owned by a freight line called Norfolk Southern, which owns a lot of what's left of the U.S.'s rail infrastructure in the Northeast. There are parts, so from so basically the last third of the trip from I forget if it's I want to say San Antonio, Texas to LA. The main railroad that we'll be following is the Southern Pacific Sunset route, which is still used by Amtrak to this day, although albeit not nearly as frequently. But yeah, so the so essentially there are three main legs of this trip. There's three main legs of this trip. The first being first following the Erie and Chicago, or the Erie/Chicago and Atlantic Railway east from New York to Chicago. And then from Chicago to San Antonio will be the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad. And then from San Antonio to LA, it's the Southern Pacific. But yeah, as I've discovered so far, the railroad through New York has quite a bit of foliage obscuring it. So that is going to not be fun when it ends up diverting from these river valleys. Although I think we're going to be following river valleys for a lot of this, with a caveat coming up that I will explain when we get there. But yeah, 1911, there wasn't anywhere near as much car infrastructure as there was today. The first, in fact, the first U.S. auto trail was still a couple years away. Or the first U.S. auto trail, which is sort of the predecessor of the numbered highway system, not the interstates, but the numbered highway system, that was still a couple years away in 1911. And of course, there was basically no airplane infrastructure. Yeah, there was no air travel infrastructure to speak of, which is why I am navigating with map and compass. Just running under the assumption that the FAA charts, the FAA VFR charts, are about as close to the level of detail that the maps Rodgers would have had to work with are. I don't know if in 1911... I know the USGS existed in 1911. I don't know if their topographic survey charts were available at that point, and I don't know if Rodgers would have had them or not. But those would have been the best maps available, if they were. Or those would probably have been the best maps available if they were. But, yeah, so plan this thing. I put literally dozens of hours of research that nobody asked me for into into these train lines. Into these old train lines. So I got all these nice maps written out. To hope this is deposit. And I am supposed to be making a sharp turn to the west here. I did all this research, and then I went to the library and discovered a book on the flight that could have saved me a lot of trouble. But You know, that's how it goes. Okay, yeah, so I think we're here. Wouldn't have completely saved me trouble, so one of the things I did was I looked up... One of the things I ended up doing was I looked up all of these, vintage timetables for these railroads, and that's what all these waypoints are, is where the stations used to be. Or in semi-rare cases still are. Now, the U.S. has some serious train nerds in it, and what I've learned is that the train nerds are far more interested in the locomotives and rolling stock than they are in the timetables, which is what I needed. So that did not help. But I was able to find archived timetables and maps for a lot of places, or for all the routes I needed eventually. Ooh, yeah, look at that. It straight up disappears. The railroad straight up disappears from the friggin' satellite image. Lovely. Please tell me I'm not supposed to be going that way. Okay, I'm not. I think I am supposed to be going this. I do think I want to divert to this south here from the looks of it. So that would put me back here. thinks we're going to need to gain some altitude. Yeah, the river's definitely preferable because it's much easier to see from... It's much easier to anticipate where it's going. Once we get to the plains, it'll mostly be... The railroad will at least mostly be straight lines. Okay. That's a road. What's that road? No, that's a... Wait. Shit. Yeah, I think so. Right. 9. Okay, so here's where the fun really begins. So the flight plan... So Rodgers' plan was to follow the Erie Railroad past Binghamton, west to Elmira. Now, what actually happened is that there's a viaduct back here in Staruka, New York. And at said viaduct, Rodgers got confused and ended up following the Delaware and Hudson train line and rail line instead of the Erie rail line. And because there wasn't a radio or anything on the plane, or having a radio on the plane wasn't an option at the time. Yeah, I don't know. But in short, nobody was able to tell him to correct his mistake. And so he ended up going south. I would think that so there's the Susquehanna. So Staruka's right by where the Erie Railroad picks up the Susquehanna River, and I would have thought that picking that up, or the lack of the Susquehanna River, would be a bit of a cue that he wasn't going the right way. But no. But anyway, nobody was there to tell him to, was like able to communicate with him and tell him he was going the wrong way or anything. So we ended up going south. And I will elaborate further as we get there. And I don't think I'm at the right place, ironically. Further complicating things for me, anyway, the Delaware and Hudson line is largely abandoned nowadays. See, so we got some sort of... Shit. Okay. Oh, damn it! So right now I'm 3 for 3. As of now, I am 3 for 3 on using the Find My Plane thing and being on the fucking flight path anyway. Anyway, here goes the Kool-Aid. Not good. Doesn't taste like grapes. I wouldn't describe it. I wouldn't use the words river sludge or horse slop, but yeah, it's not good. Anyway, if you want to brainstorm better punishments for this in the future, feel free. Yeah. Okay, well, again, no railroad, but it's probably safe to assume it was at least following this valley. For now. Why fruit punch Kool-Aid? I mean, so fruit punch does have one advantage, which is that it is, I will say, I haven't been able to find grape Kool... Like, I've only was able to find grape Kool-Aid in, like, the Capri Sun style packages. Not as, like, a powder. Or the, old... I wasn't able to find it as, like, the powder or the, those plastic bottles. Either of which I would have preferred. Fruit punch, I can still get the powder. Yeah, this segment's a nightmare. Shit. What direction am I traveling right now? 225. Alright, I'm leaving this on until I get my bearings. Sorry, chat. It was probably still more or less in the right place, to be honest, but, you know, there's just nothing... There's no resemblance between this and, or there's just nothing to go for here. My other idea was to get, like, the cheapest sparkling wine I could find and drink it at room temperature. But I also, you know, am doing this on nights I have work in the morning, so probably not ideal to do that. I'm very close to the waypoint I set, and I don't see a damn thing that looks like a railway or a rail trail. This? That looks more like a power line. Okay, so that's this road, which is not where I need to be either. Yeah, I'm leaving it. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to leave this up until I find something I can actually use to navigate. Again, in my defense, the Delaware and Hudson is disused until we get much closer to Scranton. There is supposedly a rail trail where the Delaware and Hudson used to be, but let's see, I can't find it. Once we get to Uniondale, there's this river here. It's called Scranton River, maybe. Lackawanna, okay. I've definitely heard of that before. There's a road there. This might be it. That looks like a road though, and not a... It is truly ironic. It is truly ironic that I got lost trying to go the wrong way. Or got lost trying to replicate somebody getting lost. Okay, you know what? I'm going to turn this back off and just follow this. Which is at least going more or less the right direction. might actually be what I'm looking for. I don't know. Or it might actually be what I was looking for. It's, okay, that's somebody's private airfield. Possibly the Stalls Mountain one. Maybe that's not a private airfield. Could be. I don't know. The road just ended. Alright, so anyway, somebody, so at this point, Rodgers had figured out that he was going the wrong way. Or Rodgers was reasonably certain he was going the wrong way. But, so he landed somewhere around here. I don't remember exactly. I'm not sure anybody knows exactly where it was, but he touched down somewhere around here and asked the local, or asked basically the first person he came across where he was. And said local person, possibly bemused, probably bemused by his presumably first time seeing a flying machine, and also possibly just straight up not knowing what way Binghamton was, just told him to keep going the way he was going. But, oh yeah, just keep following the train line. Yeah. So he did. And here we are. I have no idea where this lake is. I don't see any lakes that look like they have a dam. On the chart. Okay, so I'm going to guess that we're approaching this pass here. And I'm going to turn the thing on, and if I'm right, it doesn't count. Okay? Deal? Yeah. So I know I can at least follow this river valley, I think, the rest of the way to Scranton. Even if I never pick up that rail trail. Actually, that looks like that might be the rail trail. Or possibly even the actual rail. I think Forest... Either Forest City or Carbondale is where the road or the railway becomes extant again. Which I guess this would be Forest City. Windmills. Alright, so that's this ridge here. Those windmills are anachronistic for what I'm doing, but can't be helped. Alright, so this would be Carbondale, PA here, and it was at this point Rodgers stopped a second time, and stopped at a actually occupied rail station, or stopped close enough to an occupied rail station to ask what was going on. and figured out where he was and was told that he could either backtrack or he could continue to Scranton, where he would be given a reception and then would be able to follow, from Scranton, he'd be able to follow the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad northwest to, northwest, be able to meet back up with the Erie Main Line and not have to backtrack. So that is what he did. So that is what he chose to do. Well, his trip did not end. Or while his trip did not. The portion of his trip that he did on the September 22nd did not end in Scranton. That is where we will be ending. So that's another. $17 miles. So Scranton is a small industrial, or like a mid-sized industrial town in the north central Pennsylvania. Probably most famous for being the setting of The Office, U.S. version, parentheses. I don't know. I'm going to assume it was a mining and logging town back then. And also a bit of a railway hub. sometimes FAA charts will say factory on them, or will have the factories labeled, but in this case it doesn't, so don't know if I got quite know where I am here, but hoping I'll recognize Scranton when I see it. Well, this valley is somewhat more built up than I was expecting. Okay, so I see something that looks like an actual building up off in the distance there, so that might be, that's probably Scranton. Yeah, down there. I think that more cities should have, yeah, I do think more cities should have signs like the Hollywood sign. Even if they're failed advertisements that were just kept because they look cool. Actually, Pittsburgh has something kind of like that. There's a big concrete slab on the top of Mount Washington that they project, or they either project advertisements onto, or like will have use it as a giant billboard. Right now it's a boring law firm though. Pond La Hockey. Best thing I can say about that is at least it is not Acrisure. Yes, Acrisure, the official namesake of Heinz Field. Regional joke. Regional joke and/or sports freak joke. Yeah, it'd be like if some company, it'd be like if some British company bought the naming rights to the Sears Tower. Like, no one would do. No, why would you do that? Okay, based on the size of the buildings here, I'm guessing this is downtown Scranton. Which means I should be about 5 miles maybe from where I'm landing. Which I made a little bit easier on myself this time, and it's a proper regional airport. So historic information, Cal Rodgers was given his was given his promised reception when he got to Scranton. Was able to communicate with his team via wire, and eventually they worked out that he was going to follow the Delaware, Hudson, Lackawanna Western back up to the northeast and meet up with his team on the Erie Railroad at Great Bend, New York. But yeah, because it is getting late for me, or it is getting to where I am. No, turn on. I didn't ask to do that. Okay. Yeah, it is getting close to where I would like to end the stream, so we're just gonna land at Scranton Regional, or Wilkes-Barre Scranton International. That looks like it there. And call it a night once I land. I don't know, they probably fly to Canada. They probably have, like, something that flies to Ottawa. That's the closest city in Canada. Yeah. Yep, well, I made this runway real easy on myself to find. But yeah, that's, but yeah, I mean, that's not uncommon, like, in basically anywhere in the northern U.S. If you have somewhere that goes to Canada, well, then they have to go through customs, and now it's an international airport. I assume in Europe there are more international airports than domestic ones, or than non-international. Alright, I officially have no idea what this is measuring, because that's not feet. Assuming I calibrated it correctly. Zoom in on it after I land. But according to this chart here, Scranton Wilkes-Barre should be at 962 feet, and that is not at all what this is recording. Let me press the... Nope. Well, I tried pressing the button to automatically calibrate the altimeter, and that might not even work for this. Or that might not even be implemented for this. Alright, I will take that. That was a... pretty happy with that one. So let's see here. Parked by the fire station. That seems appropriate. But, of course, the real challenge with taxiing this thing is that you don't have any brakes, so you just gotta manage the engine speed very carefully and slow down before you get where you're going. Well, we're taxiing down this runway here. Alright, so we covered 165 miles today in a little bit under 3 hours. So that brings us to a total of 255 so far. Brings us to a total of 255 so far, only about 4,000 to go. Yeah. Alright. let's cut the engine here. Okay, so what is this calibrated to? 1,000 feet. Oh. Oh, I see. Okay. I wouldn't have thought. I guess that's why I was confused, because it goes up to 15, and I wouldn't trust this airplane anywhere near that high, or anywhere near that altitude. So that's why I was. But yeah, so we would be... So correctly calibrated, it should be about here. Or about here. Alright, well that's that mystery solved. Okay. So, next Tuesday we'll be back, and we'll be continuing on the next leg to Elmira, possibly farther, probably not any farther than Elmira on the next one, because that is a bit longer than either of these legs were, but I'm gonna improvise. I've got more than that prepared, so, or I've got like a couple. I've got what I figure to be a couple weeks worth of the route prepared now, so we'll take it as it comes. Thank you very much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you next time. And between now and then, straighten up and fly right.